Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to session 4 of the Better Leaders Inner Circle. We have 57 people registered for today's opportunity. Um, we won't have a lot of interaction. I think we're going to approach this more of a conversation and a discussion. As people join in, we'll engage them in some conversation about this. But we're going to talk today about something that's super important in your career as a leader, is how do you move from here to there? How do you transition into this new shiny version, better version of a leadership than what you're doing now? Even if it's not a gigantic step forward, it's often an incremental step forward that, quite frankly, I think that we as leaders are responsible to improve ourselves and to be a bit better. This is going to be a two-part session, and this morning's session will be sort of laying the groundwork of the values that we'll be talking about, the principles that we're going to talk about. How do we start laying the groundwork to step off? And we're building on some of the things we've talked about in other sessions. So if you want to go back and take a look at some of the other sessions when we talk about things like psychometric testing and clarity and communication and leadership style, that you'll be able to bounce back into there and catch up with the rest of the group. So feel free, it'll be in the same YouTube channel that this will be in, and you'll be able to bounce back, and they're quite clearly labeled leadership styles, communications, and the other one was around partnering with your boss. And then the final one, the fourth one so far in the series, has been about communications. And a lot of those things will tie into this conversation as we go along. Again, it's August. It's about 34 or 5 degrees Celsius here in beautiful Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I know we have people from around the world and across the United States, so whatever that translates into is probably cool relative to Phoenix. It's probably about 85 degrees or so here. So I know that people will either want to get out and enjoy the day, or alternatively, get off the podcast and get into the air conditioning where you want to get a wee bit cool. So we'll jump right into things this morning. Feel free to jump into the chat box and let me know what you're thinking, and I'll try to respond as we go along. So off we go. So what we're talking about this morning, as I said earlier, is your personal leadership transition plan. How do you transition from where you are to where you want to be? Well, John Wooden is like one of the most quotes, or one of the most storied basketball coach in NCAA history, and winningest coach, and spent a long time leading and developing young people into future leaders in the world. And he often said that success is a peace of mind attained through self-satisfaction and knowing you made the effort to do your best at whatever you're capable of. And I kind of resonate with that, because we've often painted ourselves into this place where we need to be perfect. We need to be an Eisenhower or a Churchill or a Gandhi or a Martin Luther King or whoever that you can pull out of the history books as these ideal leaders. But we're not all capable of meeting that standard. And I don't think we all have to even try, because quite frankly, a lot of those people were flawed human beings. Luckily for a lot of them, it wasn't in the social media age when some of the things that they got up to and behaved around women and sort of things that were probably not exactly cool. Certainly isn't cool today. It probably wasn't cool when those leaders we sometimes look to existed. In fact, just last night we had a conversation about military leaders, and one person at this dinner party was a retired Royal Canadian Mounted Policeman, and he talked about a terrible analogy that I got to hate as a senior leader in the Canadian Army, was about when you became officers, you take your brain out and set it aside and put on your officer's cap. And I had to respond, hopefully gently, that in my experience, the officers and the leaders I've met and all of the organizations I've worked with are exceptional human beings. male and female, or whatever flavor of person that they were exceptional human beings and were brilliant in their own way. But a lot of times too, they were just flawed people, regular people that had family problems and maybe problems with power or problems with influence. And so again, I don't really think we should hold ourselves up to those people. We need to hold ourselves up to ourselves. And I think this wooden quote speaks to that quite a bit. You've heard me say this several times in the Better Leader Inner Circle program, is the world is full chock-a-block full of failed superintendents, site superintendents who used to be perfectly good carpenters. People get promoted because they're competent and good at their job. And then they get promoted into this thing called leadership and management, where they've never once been trained to do this job. They don't have the capacity and competencies to do it. And they often fail because they've been forced into a new profession, not a different role in the same career path they were on before. And I think we need to be very cognizant as we step forward as leaders to make sure that we respectfully prepare ourselves and prepare the people around us to be successful in this new role as a transition into a leader. So why change? Why change at all? You know, maybe you have reasonably decent competencies and skills that that you've been relying on up to now, that's gotten you promoted into an office, or promoted maybe even to the corner office. But you know, I think we have to really think about, are we doing the best job we can, and can we do, or even at a minimum, can we do that job better? I'm involved with an organization where I'm part of the HR team that supports and supervises the CEO. And that person just did the performance review, 360 performance review of reports, and extraordinarily high scores. Out of 5, we're looking at 4.7, 4.8. You know, we're just a modicum, a couple of centimeters, inches away from a perfect score as far as their performance over the past year. But even in that circumstances, the person didn't accept just here, you did a great job. They wanted to know how they could do the job better. Where could they improve? How could they develop themselves and be even better yet? How could they support the areas that were a little bit lower, not terrible? We could all sit around and pat ourselves on the back and say, what a great job. But this person really wanted to invest in herself to become an even better leader, even do an even better job. That's why we want to change. We want to change because we can all do better. We can always improve on those little things that get in the way of how we do our work. So what does that look like? Well, and again, if you've been with us for a while on the Inner Circle, you may have seen this, and it's like we are moving from experience where the experience you have in your current job, you have to transition more into credibility. It's not good enough to be the best carpenter or the best accountant or the best whatever. Now you have to be credible as a leader, and that's a different skill set. You know, people assume that, that you probably got promoted because you were the best at whatever you were doing before. But now you have to be credible. And as I said earlier, we're moving from a current role we're into a new profession. It's not a promotion in the old job. It is a completely new career path of being a leader. And if we don't acknowledge that, we're going to run up. And this transition will demand of you to add, to adapt, or change or grow your knowledge, your skills, and your behavior. So for example, the knowledge you need to build as a leader now becomes more about human beings. What motivates people? What's going on in their lives? How do we get people to be better at their work? The skill sets now become more of a facilitator than a doer. How do you bring people together? Your skill sets are now more around communications. How do you tell people how they're supposed to do their job, and how to get done what you need them to get done? And behavior is about standing straight and being confident in yourself and not hesitating and not being just another one of the boys and girls, but a leader. This doesn't mean that you can't be human, but make no doubt about it. If you're slumping around and coming in late and setting a bad example and not living the standard that you expect of others, they will not follow you, and you will eventually fail. So these three things, skills, knowledge, and behavior, are what we're going to get into a little bit here. And the purpose, again, of this session is to set a baseline of what we're looking at. So what we want to think about is, what I'm asking you to do in the chat box is to think about somebody you know. Think about somebody you've bumped into in past that would exemplify a leader. And describe that person. Like, what did they do with their body language? And what did they look and sound like? So I encourage you to enter that in the chat box. And as we're thinking about it, I'll tell you my own stories, right? So in the military, certainly your dress and deportment is expected to be of the highest standard. But I can always remember people that were out of shape, overweight, not physically fit. And in the Army, I'm sorry to tell anybody, it's not a comment about body shaming here, but it's a comment about in the military, you're expected to be fit and to be able to run and fight. That's your job. And if you look out of sorts and look like you a bit slovenly and a little bit on the heavy side and can't do your job, then people discount you as a leader. If you don't stand straight and walk without dragging your heels and take the time to clean your shoes and boots and your cap badge, what you represent is what you're going to get back from your soldiers. And I can tell you, when I was a senior leader, a sergeant major actually, and we were in the field doing work in the swamps, in the bush, day in, day out for seemingly weeks on end, I actually took the time to clean my boots. If I had the chance, I would take some shoe polish and blacken my boots so that I always set the example of how I wanted my soldiers to behave. And by doing that, and by shaving regularly and washing, eventually people started shaving and washing more diligently and cleaning their equipment and cleaning their stuff more diligently, and by setting that standard. So I see lots of people have great comments, walking straight, always smiling, always saying good morning, setting that example of how they looked and sounded like in their body language when they're doing their job. So the next question then is, what did it make you feel to be around that person when they were positive and encouraging, right? So if you are walking around with a big slump and a big Linus, Linus, was it from this? Oh, Pigpen from the Peanuts cartoons, when he walked around and a big cloud was always over him and dust was ruffling up around his feet. If that kind of person will just spread throughout your organization like a virus, and people will start slumping around a little bit. But if somebody's walking and they're positive and they're laughing and they're having a good time doing the work, even if the work is kind of miserable work, lots of jokes, lots of humor, people will feel positive. People that stop and say good morning and hello and things like that, well, it's infectious, and actually take the time to listen and care for what's going on. Right? And it makes other people feel positive. And then how did it make you feel? Right? If your boss was open and honest and engaging and not derisive. We had a conversation a little while ago around performance management, and I can still remember the one person on the call. I won't repeat her name now, but it's in the video. She was doing performance management and her boss told her she was like a HB pencil, that she didn't leave a lasting impression anywhere she went. Well, what a heartbreaking, horrible thing to say to somebody. So, this is the example that we have to move to. We have to be conscious of these things, and we have to be conscious of how do we gather the information, how are we presenting ourselves to other people. So why change? The second part of the question is, what would be your reasons for not or having a negative response to change? Well, most and then again, the second part of that is, how does the change align with your values? Well, the first question is around, how does this, why do we have a negative response to being expected to change? Well, we're scared generally. We're vulnerable. If we admit we have to change, are we admitting that we were wrong before? And if it doesn't work, maybe we've tried to change, and I can tell you now, at one point in time, I was 195 pounds of lean, mean fighting machine and fit and strong. And now I'm about 220. And I've tried and tried to get my weight back down at least to 210. And I've made it a couple of times, but it doesn't take very long for my weight to come back on. I'm all of a sudden back up to 220, sometimes even 225. And it's discouraging because it didn't stick. And our lives are replete with stories of us trying to change and not failed, and especially in the workplace. Well, we tried that and it didn't work at a personal level and as an organizational level. So some of the reasons would be fear. Just out of fear, can we pull this off? Can we become a better leader? Can we do what we need to do? And sometimes it's like, I tried it and it failed. Well, one of the reasons we can't quite get it done when we try to change, or we're worried about change, is because the change doesn't really align with our values. You can't make yourself somebody else. You can be a hard-nosed boss, but if your character is not that person, it's super stressful and super hard and will not stick. I've never smoked cigarettes, but I used to drink a lot of booze, and I had to quit drinking. I decided one time I had to quit drinking because, quite frankly, I was a drunk, and that was getting in the way of my values. I was becoming not a very nice person when I drank, especially Canadian rye whiskey. And I knew that I had to make this change. And then once it aligned with my values, it was relatively easy for me to quit, because luckily I wasn't an alcoholic, but I sure liked to drink. I was one step away from it. And because I aligned myself with my values, I was able to stop drinking hard liquor for sure. And I can still enjoy a glass of wine or a cold beer, but I stopped drinking hard liquor for the most part, because I had to align myself with my values. And as a young leader in organizations like the military and Red Cross, and even when I work with municipalities and some of my clients, like if I can align the change I need to get where I need to get to with my values, then I'm better apt to do it. For example, I sometimes, even still today, I can be pretty terse and short in my language and how I have a conversation and respond. And I found out through a 360, to be honest, was that I was actually hurting people's feelings often. Now, my personal values are that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, right? I don't want to be that guy. And once I realized that, I thought, okay, I need to figure out what to do differently here, because I'm running against my values. I'm running against who I am as a human being, and I have to stop that. So as we mentioned again earlier, we talked a lot about this, is about the transition, right? You're moving into a new role. So half of what you did, the 50% rule, is kind of cool. And I just wrote about it on my blog at stephenarmstrong.ca. So if you want to read more about it, feel free. Is that 50% of what got you to where you are in life is essential to your next role. So if I were to say that being a good carpenter and I was getting promoted to a site superintendent, a lot of what got me to this place is that I was a good carpenter. I had the skills and I had the talent, and I was able to pass on knowledge to other people about how to be a carpenter. But the next 50% is new to me. It will not get me to where I want to be. In fact, it can be a drag. It can hold me up and stop me from getting there. So the 50% that I might be worried about is how to communicate with people, how to develop project plans and manage complicated things when there's different working pieces and gears and meshing that's happening here. And if I am struggling with the second 50%, and what we do as human beings is we default back to what we're good at. So then you become a micromanaging manager, and you're focusing on the carpentry stuff, which is driving your carpenters crazy, and you're ignoring the rest of the work that's on your plate that you're not very good at. And that's the part will get in the way of your success and quite likely could lead to your failure. The problem is they say that no one can tell you which half is which, and I tend to agree to that to a degree, to a certain degree, but the part is that I do know for a fact that if you are struggling in your job, you default to what you're good at, where your competencies are high. So we need to invest in the places we need to improve and develop our skill sets. Your values need to align with what you're doing. So this is a wonderful quote here about leadership begins and ends with authenticity. It is yourself, being the person you were created to be. And authentic leaders genuinely desire to serve others through leadership and guided only by the qualities of the heart, passion, and compassion. So this quote I just found it very profound to think about. But the one side of it that it doesn't really address is that we are not here to serve people to the detriment of us achieving our goals and responsibilities. We are not leading anybody if we are not achieving our goals and objectives. You're running a country club. You're a laissez-faire leader, and you're allowing people to have their own personal goals and objectives, and probably even picadillos and whatnot achieved to the detriment of achieving your goals. So what we want to do is guide the best qualities of the people that we are working with. Build upon what's in their heart, build upon their passions, and build upon their compassion for their work to get things done that we need done. And that, to me, is the secret to leadership. Is we want to be the best person we can be, leading the best of the people we work with to achieve the highest standard of excellence in our goals and objectives. So I would encourage you to think about these questions. Like, what is important to you? Is it family time? Is it early retirement? Is it skiing, fishing, or something outside of work? All of these things will start to help you align to what kind of leader you want to be. And what do you want to accomplish as this leader? Is it a personal accomplishment that you want to get promoted to the next level? Is it that you want to have a good reputation with your peers or your employees, or you want to get the bonus that may be on the table for you if you succeed? All of these things are valid, but I have to say that if it's financial or career driven, then you will not necessarily be as authentically passionate about your work as you hope to be, because you are thinking mostly about yourself. So how do you rephrase that question about what do you want to accomplish as a leader to be more about the people you work for in achieving the results you want? And then what's the essence of your character? Like, truly. And there's lots of tools out there that will help you figure out things around your character that maybe that you can't quite put your finger on, because we're quite frankly terrible judges of our own character, both good and bad. As human beings, we overstate where we think we're bad, and we understate where we think we're good, and so we're not very good at this character business, or judging our character. But if you do psychometric skills like DISC, Myers-Briggs, or a number of other ones, then you can start to get at least a sense of where your character is. Like, do you really put a lot of emphasis on trust and confidence, or that you want to be liked, or whatever it is? Like for me, I have to work. If I'm working in an environment, I need to be in an environment where I trust the people I'm with. And if I find out that people can't be trusted, then quite frankly, often I behave quite badly in past. And I also know that if I'm in that environment, an old sin of mine is a terrible temper, and that comes close to the surface again. So I understand that part of my character, the essence of my character. So I understand too, then how do I develop my authentic passion and take advantage of those things as opposed to let them be detrimental to my capacity and my success. How do you want to express your leadership purpose? By actions, through talk, whatever it is, by results. I'm a big results person. I think I like to express my leadership purpose in two ways. I want to achieve results, and I want my people to as best possible, respect me. And then how do you build enduring relationships? I've been quite lucky in my life that, over this past summer, I've had a number of old friends that I knew and from high school, and we joined the Army together, or we went on different careers together. And we are still in touch, 60-year-long friendships. Well, not 60, but 50 for sure. And I know that there are people I worked with throughout my career that I'm able to participate with and get relationships that are still building from people I worked with 10 and 20 and 30 years ago. And the other one is how you would consistently develop yourself. Like, how are you going to invest in that so that you can always be improving? Like, I'm a passionate reader. I love TED Talks, and I love going to seminars when people I know that are thoughtful and bright. I love teaching. I find for me, teaching is one of the ways I develop myself. I learn more than the class learns in these sessions that I teach at the university on leadership. We have conversations about things I never thought about. And quite honestly, lately, I have two young granddaughters. They're quite young right now, but the questions they ask and the things that make you consider and how do you express yourself around people is always a growth opportunity in that. So, like, for me, it's like reading, education, listening to thought leaders, and then learning from my teaching experience and how to get things done and how to be a better person. Our values wrap around us, and we are not equally strong in each one of these 6 subcircles around the authentic leader. We talked about a lot of it, like leading with the heart and developing ourselves, and do we compromise on principles? Well, if some of these things are hard to do, like if every hill is a hill that you're going to die on, it's exhausting work doing that. So pick your fight. Is it important enough for you to stand up on principle and never cede? So these are the things that I think as leaders need to start wondering about and thinking about. How do we lead with purpose and mission and values? And how do we build these relationships? Are we consistent, and are we self-disciplined in how we conduct ourselves at work so that we set that example to the people around us? And again, dedication to yourself and leading with the heart. I'm not a perfect person by any stretch of the imagination, and I've made gigantic mistakes in my life. And I've made mistakes with the people that look to me as a leader. And it's heartbreaking to me when I think back to people that I probably were hurt by some of the decisions that I've made. But if you lead with the heart, people will forgive you. And if you're clear about what you want done, they'll understand. They don't expect you to be perfect. They expect you to be as good as you can be. So I think this point on values is extraordinarily important to us as we go through. So how do we start working through this role transition? How do we start putting these things that we talked about so far into action for ourselves? We've been using skills to build relationships and build respect. Hopefully, we're empathetic in our actions and our deeds, and we listen and we want to coach. We know a lot of the people that we will be working with as we transition into this different level of leadership. So we have a good sense of where they're coming from. And we understand how, hopefully we understand how we are viewed, as well as how our team and the people around us are viewed. So we can take these tangible actions and start working on that. If we know what's going on and we've put some thought into where we want to be, or we wouldn't be having this conversation in the first place. If you didn't already consider what you want to do, then or how you want to make it better and what you want to change in that, that's why we're here. You made an effort to come to here so you can do these things. And the practicality of what we're doing is that we need to understand the rules of the engagement, the policies and procedures of our organization that allow us to do certain things, or sometimes get in the way of us doing certain things. So all of these things we have in our pocket. We should be confident in what we want to do next. How do we want to improve on ourselves and be a better leader and that better person? So we need to work around. I'm not going to go into detail about these points, but these are the things that are going to get in the way. Being caught in the middle, we're in a jam. We might be dealing with disparity or differential of age and experience of the people we're working with. Often we're uncomfortable to get results because that makes us look ambitious, or we might have to make decisions we're not comfortable making. There's also a higher visibility of what you're doing. I recall we had a new CEO come to the organization, and after about 6 months, you could have the sense of things were starting to kind of change a little bit about how the culture and how we wanted things done. And I remember one of the employees coming to me and asking about if he should worry about his job because of the new boss, the new CEO. I had to laugh a little bit, but I said to Peter, buddy, I said, you don't have anything to worry about. I said, the closer to the top you are, the closer to the door you are. I will be gone long before you're gone. And because the higher visibility is a bit of a lightning rod sometimes. And now, as you're improving, you have to figure out how to facilitate conversation and to negotiate with other supervisors and your new peer group. And often we don't always have all the authority we think we need to get our work done. So these are things that might get in the way of the points we raised earlier about why we should be successful. There's also things we have to manage on the other side of that, and these are some of them. We're caught in this middle place. So our job, quite frankly, is to handle complaints and grievances and disciplines. And then the communications component of the Better Leader Inner Circle, we talk quite a bit about that, about the importance of being able to endure short-term discomfort for long-term success. And when I say that, having those hard conversations. I coach a person right now who is leading a team, and we've got to the place where we identified a number of employees that weren't performing up to the standard that they had hoped within the organization. And through some coaching and support, this person was able to go to these employees and say, okay, I need to know fully well that you are with me, or that you're not coming along for the ride as we change the organization. You have to be 100% bought in, and I will support. This person said, I will support you all the way to help you move to this place. But if you can't do it, I need to know now. Now, what an uncomfortable conversation. You're basically, there's a horrible, huge, giant underlying threat to what you're saying. And yet this person was able to do that. And by doing that, people made choices that they didn't want to be there anymore. They were given a severance package and sent on their way, and new people were brought in to be part of the person's team. We always have to be able to balance systems with the human aspects of our role. There are rules, there are systems, and then there's human demands that may get in the way of that. Sometimes you might be in a collective agreement setting where nobody's going to get promoted unless they have seniority, or at least if you don't have you have to be able to build a hell of a good case to get that done. And we're dealing with different people in a different way, your boss and your peers. And they expect things from you as a team player and to get things done. I always, one time we had a bad year when I was a leader with Red Cross, and we came up short financially. There's a longer story to this than what I'm inferring, but it still was my responsibility. And some of my peers said to me that this can't happen again. Your shortfall had to be made up from other places in the organization. And I worked hard always to make sure that didn't happen again. And your people expect you honest conversations and communications from you. They need clarity about what their job is. They need all of the information that you can possibly share with them and can share with them. And they need the level of communications that maybe you're not used to doing. You cannot be a one and done communicator. You need to be consistently reminding people about the important things about the work that's happening around. So we need to value communications. We need to up our game around communications. If you may be interested in a number of programs, like if you were to go to Toastmasters or some speaking organization that helps you articulate things better, you may want to invest in how to write, because if you can write your arguments out, then you can speak your arguments better and clearer. And if you write out an argument and it sounds legit, then it's a good story. It's a good argument. And I use argument in the best sense of the word, that you're building a case for something, right? You're arguing a position. We need to understand, how do we value each person on our team as an individual and not just the collective? Everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. We have to watch our own personal thoughts and values, especially in this hyper-political, hyper world that we live in right now. We may have opinions about politics and political leaders, or even within our organization about leadership. And we just have to watch. We can't share that with everybody anymore, because if you are always denigrating your boss or headquarters or the head office or whatever it is, you are actually denigrating the whole organization, and you're making yourself look bad in front of your people. That doesn't mean that you are a sycophant or a brown noser and you're running around stroking all of your bosses, but you shouldn't be sharing your negative thoughts about them in a public way. And we need to learn how to communicate with people on a very intimate and a very personal basis. We need to understand enough of what's going on in their lives that we can talk to them as human beings. Do they have problems at home? Are the kids in soccer or hockey or whatever? How do we have this conversation with people in a way that's respectful? And one of the ways I do it, because my memory has never been a strong point around lots of things, certainly around people, is I have a notebook and I write down in it that Mary's kids had a soccer tournament coming up, and I put a little note in my book to come back to Mary a little bit after that weekend and say, hey Mary, how did it go with the soccer tournament? Or if somebody's got kids, or maybe they have a kid that's not doing well at school or health or whatever, and then you understand why the person might be running late time and again. So we need to figure out how to communicate with people as human beings on a very personal level. And once we get a sense of our values, and we get a sense of who we are and what we want to do, we can develop what Paul Olofs has referred to as passion capital. And he's made a case in his writing that passion capital is one of the most critical assets of any organization. And passion capital is a sum total of the energy you bring to the job, the intensity that you bring to the job, and the level of sustainability that you can bring to ensure that passion stays. So we need energy. It's interesting. I was speaking with a potential client, and they were asking some really interesting questions of me. I had to really, it was great. I had to really think about it. And they wanted to know, well, why was I interested in working with them on this project? And I said, well, the number one reason is I need to be around people. I get great energy from the people I am working with. I love speaking to an engaged audience when I do my keynotes, and I get super energized when I come off the stage. And I mentioned earlier about when I teach, what I get out of the class when I'm teaching is way more than I think I'm giving them. I get empowered. I get excited about things. And then there's this level of intensity, and there's different levels of intensity. You cannot walk through life gritting your teeth and growling at everything all day, every day. That's too hard. But if it's important, you need to bring a level of intensity to that conversation, that you express yourself, that it's important what's happening. And then the final one is like, how long can you sustain this compassion? So you need to balance this out so you're not burning yourself out, or equally bad is burning out the people around you because you're just chewing them up through this level of intensity and passion and energy that nobody can sustain. It's like, okay, bring in 2 more. We just burned up the last 2 guys and girls. So we need to figure out this balance here. And I think you need to figure it out on your own, because you will best know where you get your energy from. It's an interesting side story around introverts and extroverts. And yes, an introvert is somebody who's generally more quiet and withdrawn, and an extrovert is often out there a little bit more. But that's not really the true story behind those 2 words, introvert and extrovert. What is important to know about that is that that's where they get their energy from. And quite frankly, despite what some people think of a guy like me, is I'm quite introverted. I need time by myself to recharge my energy. I need time to walk with a dog, read a book. If we were talking about some of my sins, and unhealthy lifestyle choices in my past, I still enjoy a cigar time and again and sit there quietly with my book. I can sit there for an hour and read a book and enjoy a cigar. And that's where I get my energy from. That's how I rebuild myself. So learn about yourself, figure these things out, invest in yourself so you understand where this stuff is coming from. When we're transitioning into this new person, one of the things we want to avoid is a series of traps. And I'll speak to the 4 traps. One is the big speech. Like, we want to wrap things up in a nice bow, and we want to give this big, powerful speech, like I have a dream speech, or that's not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Or the Gettysburg Address, one of the most powerful 200 some words that were ever spoken in the English language. But things are not that clean and neat sometimes. So we need to figure out how to keep people clear and not overwhelm them, and to the point where they start thinking, well, I've heard this nonsense before. This is the big change coming, and blah, 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 your new boss, new blah, blah, blah. So we want to be able to express ourselves and communicate in a thoughtful, meaningful way, and repetitive way, and using all of the means of communication to our, like, when I say that, email, video, in-person, telephone calls, even handwritten notes, whatever it is to get your message across. And we need to be very thoughtful about our communications and not just tie it all up in one big bow and say, nice job, everybody, we got it done. You know, there's an old Western, in the Westerns, there was always a line about the new sheriff in town, and he would come into town to clean up. And that's a bogus way of dealing with people. What we want to be able to do is be candid about expectations and ensure everyone knows that you're in charge, and you want to be telling people how they can be successful. But if you're coming in with this new sheriff in town sort of approach, and that you can't clean everything all up, then you take yourself away from success. People will not believe that this is going on. And quite frankly, they've heard that nonsense before. They've heard that story before about the new sheriff in town, and they're not buying it. So you need to be a credible person coming in as a credible leader. You know, we often too bring our stories from our past along, that we know what's best and we know what's good, and we set the standard. And again, all we do then is create this thing where people roll their eyes in the back of their head when you're talking to them about, oh yeah, I remember back in 1945, or when Armstrong was in the army, blah, 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 blah. So be judicial with your stories, and to be judicial with how you're expressing to your people what the standard is, then that they can meet it, and quit comparing people to things of your past or in other organizations. It says not helpful. And when you do that, you just quite frankly isolate yourself, and people don't really want to work with you anymore because they think, well, I can't do anything right, so why should I bother? And then getting stuff done at any cost. And this goes back to that passion and sustainability conversation. Like, we don't want to be unreasonable and dismissive about people, and we don't want to put people into a trap where they're just going to fry themselves out and be alienated at the end of the day. So, what we want to do is make it clear what's important and vital stuff that we need to get done, and that's the stuff we have to get done. But if everything is a super crisis level, then there's a different problem going on, and we need to consider that with our people. So we've kind of wrapped up towards the end of our day today, ladies and gentlemen. It's going to be a short session. It's a summer session. I think what we'll do is I'm going to sign off on the recording here, and then what we'll do is then we'll open up the conversation offline so people can speak freely and don't have to worry about recordings. Our next session is on the 21st of September. It says Wednesday there. It should be a Thursday at 11 Mountain. And we will further explore this topic about how to transition. So for the 57 people, I'm super happy with that have signed up for the Better Leader Inner Circle. I'm proud of you for putting the investment in yourself of time and energy and, quite frankly, money. And I'm glad you're here with me today. And I look forward to seeing everybody on September 21st at 11 o'clock for the next session. You will be automatically registered for that, and you'll see a few emails from me for the coming out over the next couple of days. All the best, everybody. And remember, being a better leader is the incremental and everyday choice about doing small things to be better. Take care and be safe. Thank you.